Hello there, it's King Knight and welcome to a new video on this channel. Today I'm talking about something I want to talk about for a long while now actually, but I just haven't really touched on this channel at all. I mean, I've done the odd few superhero film reviews on this channel, but I haven't really done many of them, and there's a good reason for that. There's a good reason that I'm going to get into today. And so today I'm talking about my 5 big reasons that I don't really like the Marvel movies. No. Just before you turn off this video, just before you dislike this video, comment down below and say, you're wrong, your reasons are wrong, and everything you say are wrong. Just listen, just hear me out here. This is only my opinion. I'm only saying my opinion on this channel. That's all I ever do on this channel. I just spread my opinion into the film community. I'm not trying to persuade people to dislike the Marvel movies as well. If you love the Marvel movies, that's fantastic. And I absolutely love that you love them, because obviously you found some more enjoyment and then you found something you actually like in them that I just simply haven't found. That's fantastic if you love them, and if you really do, that is great. And also, bear this in mind, I'm not someone who grew up reading the comic book. I'm not someone who grew up reading Marvel comics. I'm not someone who grew up reading DC comics. I'm just somebody who came to the MCU about 5-6 years ago, have really started to watch the films since then. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did watch a few superhero films growing up. I mean, I watched Iron Man 2 growing up, which I used to think was a masterpiece. Boy, was I wrong. Now I have a brain. Now I know that film's not a masterpiece. And at the same time, though, I have also watched Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. However, with the Dark Knight trilogy, I don't consider them Batman films. I don't consider them superhero films in any way. I mean, to be honest, when I sit down to watch Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, I always feel like I'm sitting down to watch a crime cape thriller. I don't really consider the Dark Knight trilogy Batman films or superhero films. And don't get me wrong, even so it does have Batman characters in there, like the Joker and Scarecrow and so on and so on and so on. They would be different films if they didn't have those characters in there. I don't feel like I'm watching Batman films when I'm sitting down to watch Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. So I don't actually consider the Dark Knight trilogy, you know, DC films or Batman films. And even though I have watched those films from a young age, I'm not really biased on DC in any way either. I'm not really biased on Marvel or DC. If anything, I'd be more biased toward Marvel, because I did watch Iron Man 2 a few times when I was growing up. But apart from that, though, I only really got into the MCU about 5-6 years ago. And also, one more thing, just because I said I don't really like the MCU films, that doesn't mean I don't like all of them. There's actually a few that I do like. I'm a huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I love Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. And at the same time, I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man Homecoming. I quite like Spider-Man Far From Home, although I think the third act of that film is quite messy. But I find Ant-Man quite enjoyable. And at the same time, I'm a huge fan of Jon Favreau's Iron Man, you know, the film that started off the MCU. I actually went back and revisited that film, and I found a lot of things that I actually liked about it, more things that I liked about it than I didn't like about it. So, I am actually a fan of some MCU films. It's not, I don't dislike all of them, I just dislike the majority of them, I must admit. But the ones I do like, I really like. That's the thing, though. The thing is, you know, this is only my opinion in the end. If you love the Marvel films, that's great. But I'm just saying my opinion on this channel, though. I'm not trying to persuade anyone to dislike the Marvel movies, although if you agree with me, that's great. All I'm saying is my opinion on this channel. That's all I ever do. So please don't come at me in the comment section and say, oh, your opinion's wrong, because it's just my opinion in the end. Everyone has their own opinion. Maybe you love some of the Marvel movies, maybe you don't like some of the Marvel movies, or maybe you absolutely despise the Marvel movies, or maybe you just think some of them are good and some of them are alright. But everyone has their own opinion, and I'm just saying mine in this video. So please don't come at me for disliking the majority of the MCU films. But anyway, let's get into my 5 big reasons why I don't really like the MCU films. And this is in no particular order, by the way. I haven't put this in an order. I've just come with 5 big reasons over the past couple of years after watching the MCU films why I'm not really a fan of their films. And by the way, just before I get into this, I don't think any of them are terrible films in any way. I just don't really like them personally. I actually think they're all well made. For example, I'm not really a fan of Avengers Infinity War, but I think that film does balance, you know, that huge amount of characters very well. I'm just not a fan of that film personally. So I'm not saying they're bad films in any way. I'm just saying I don't really like them as films myself. But anyway, I'm going to start waffling now. I'm going to get into my 5 big reasons why I'm not really a fan of the films of the MCU. So let's talk about reason number 5. Reason number 5 is the forced comedy in the MCU films. To be honest, when comedy works in films, it works for me quite a lot. I must admit, I've seen some comedies recently which I absolutely love, but I've also seen some comedies, you know, in recent years which have said their genre is a comedy and it just hasn't been funny. And the thing is with the Marvel films, it has a lot of forced comedy in there which I don't really find funny. I mean, saying that, I find the Guardians of the Galaxy films really funny. I laugh loads at Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, but I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 are funny because of the comedy they throw in there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it just have some really funny moments, like said from like Star-Lord or Gamora or Drax or whatever, but I don't think the funniest part of those films is the dialogue from the Guardians of the Galaxy. I actually think the funniest part of those films is the way it deals with everything. You know, the way it deals with those big life and death situations. You know, I remember there's one bit in Guardians of the Galaxy where literally the villain, I forgot his name is now, the one that Lee Pace plays in the film, he's about to, you know, he's about to end the world, and then Star-Lord just starts dancing to "Ooh Child," and it gets that's a really good moment. I laughed out loud because that's why I like so much about superhero films. You know, I'm going to get into this again a bit later, but I think superhero films are the best when they're just enjoyable and they know a superhero film, and that's what they deliver on, and that's what Guardians of the Galaxy delivers on. That's what Guardians of the Galaxy delivers on. That's what both of the Guardians of the Galaxy films deliver on. I mean, there's even a line in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 from Rocket where he says, "What are we doing? We're saving the galaxy again. Oh, it'll be 2-time galaxy savers this time." And that's really, really funny. Unfortunately, you know, I don't like the comedy in some of the other Marvel films. Like, you'll get some comedy just thrown in there in some of the other Marvel films. It just doesn't work. I mean, take a look at Avengers Endgame. Half the universe has been obliterated. Half the universe doesn't exist anymore. You know, Thanos has succeeded in his plan, and he did the click, which, side note, it's a bit weird if you ask me. You know, he did a click like it was in a musical, and, you know, half the universe just disappeared, half the universe, well, died. It didn't die, did it? In Avengers Endgame, half the universe doesn't exist, and then all the Avengers that are still alive are trying to come up with this plan, but then they're all lounging about, you know, having quite a lot of fun and cracking jokes throughout the film, and I'm just sitting there like, seriously, half the universe has died, and you're cracking jokes. I mean, I remember there's one line from Don Cheadle's War Machine in the film when he said something like, why don't I just go back in time and kill baby Thanos? And I was appalled at that joke. I mean, I remember in the cinema when that joke happened, when I was watching the film in the cinema, and everyone else around me was laughing. I was like, I'm so happy you find that funny, because I just find that joke just stupid. I really do. Because, honestly, it's such bad writing. I mean, there's loads of bit of weird comedy throughout the whole of the MCU. We get a really serious scene, and then get some really forced comedy fun. And that's the same with Thor Ragnarok. You know, the thing is with Thor Ragnarok, I remember going watching that in 2017, and I really wanted to like it. I'm a huge fan of Taika Waititi. I really like What We Do in the Shadows, which he co-directed with Jermaine Clements, which I'm a huge fan of. I love What We Do in the Shadows film. I haven't seen the TV show, but I love the film. But I remember watching Thor Ragnarok, which is also from directed by Taika Waititi, and I remember sitting there watching and just thinking, I want to laugh. Why am I not laughing? Why don't I find any of this funny? And it just comes down to this. It was too forced. It was trying to be funny, and it didn't work. Like that moment in Avengers Infinity War, when I can't remember who it was now, but somebody bows to Charlotte, Black Panther, played by the late great Chadwick Boseman in the film, and then, you know, Black Panther's like, oh, we don't do that here. And I'm just like, I want to laugh. Why am I not finding this funny? And that's because it's forced, and it doesn't work when it's forced there. It works in films like Guardians of the Galaxy or Spider-Man Homecoming, when they know the superhero film and they have fun with themselves, and therefore when the comedy is in there, it works. I mean, I actually don't think the comedy dialogue is the best part of Spider-Man Homecoming or the best part of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. I think the best part of those films is just the funness of them. And I don't really like forced comedy in the Marvel films. I just think when it's thrown in there, it just seems out of place and a bit dumb and stupid, to be honest. It almost seems like the writers are trying to sit around and say, you know what, let's try and get a joke in there. And then when they do get a joke in there, more often than not, it just doesn't work, to be honest. But anyway, that's reason number 5, the forced comedy of these Marvel films. That's one of the reasons I don't really like these Marvel films. Reason number 4 and reason number 3 kind of go together, but I'm going to put them in 2 separate reasons, because I've got a lot to talk about with all this, because I haven't really talked about Marvel movies at all on this channel, and so this is kind of my first time talking about it all. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into reason 4 why I'm not really a big fan of these Marvel movies. And reason number 4 is the predictability of these Marvel movies. Now, when I say this, I don't mean like, obviously, I don't mean like the superhero wins in the end. I know that's going to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called a superhero film. You know, I know no matter what, no matter if the villain looks like he's going to win, or if the heroes like they're all going to die, or even if the heroes do die in these films, the heroes ultimately win in the end. So I know that's going to happen. But what I mean by the predictability of these Marvel movies is simply this. Take a look back, I think it was 2018, when Avengers Endgame was being filmed, and we had these set photos online. These set photos were leaked online of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Paul Rudd all filming Avengers Endgame in New York. And a lot of people, these images were all over the internet, and a lot of people made videos focusing on these watches that, you know, Paul Rudd, Chris Evans, and Robert Downey Jr. were. And then a lot of people go, oh my god, it's time travel. Avengers Endgame is going to go time travel. I'm talking about months. I'm talking almost a year before Avengers Endgame even came out. I'm looking at all these videos because that's what I follow. I'm a big movie nut, so I follow all these, you know, videos online. So I was thinking to myself, okay, Russo brothers, please prove me wrong. And then I went to Avengers Endgame, and I remember quite vividly sitting in the film and just thinking to myself, through the second act and even the majority of the third act, why have you done this? Why have you just done the simple time travel route? It's predictable, and to be honest, it isn't that enjoyable. In Avengers Endgame, one of my big issues is they go back to the best of Marvel movies, and literally, they go back to Thor the Dark World. I'm sorry, no matter what you think of MCU, Thor the Dark World is simply a bad movie, and it's probably, if not the worst MCU movie of them all. I actually think Thor the Dark World is rubbish. And then go back to Thor the Dark World in Avengers Endgame, and I'm like, this is the best of Marvel, and it doesn't work. And then they go back to Guardians of the Galaxy, they go back to the Star-Lord dancing scene at the start of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you get this really weird scene where Nebula, a Hawkeye, are watching Star-Lord's dance from, the start of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm there thinking, this is such a cringe-worthy scene, and it isn't funny. And yet, again, there was people laughing in the cinema, and that was great, but at the same time, it wasn't funny, and it was one of the things I had wrong with the film, because it was just like, what is this? Why do we have to see the best of Marvel movies in Avengers Endgame? We've already spent 20 odd movies getting up to this point, and now we really want to go revisit back in some such weird ways. Like, honestly, that moment in Avengers Endgame when Hawkeye and Nebula watching Star-Lord dance from the Guardians of the Galaxy, it's just rubbish and it's unfunny. I laughed quite a lot at Star-Lord's dance in Guardians of the Galaxy because it works in that film, because it's unexpected and you didn't see it coming, and at the same time it was really, really funny in that film. But then in Avengers Endgame when it happens, it's like, that's really, really cringeworthy. That's just one of my big problems with the Marvel movies. The fact that it's just so predictable. I knew the Avengers Endgame plot. I knew where the story of Avengers Endgame was going to go before I'd even watched the film. Like months, and I mean months and months and months before I watched the film. And I mean, yeah, it's because I'm a movie fan, and I was, I'm one of the people who likes to hear about all those leaks. But at the same time, I really wish the Russo brothers did something unexpected with Avengers Endgame and took a risk with that film and didn't just go the predictable time travel route, which is just so. It was almost like a big budget Doctor Who. Honestly, there was actually an episode of Doctor Who, I think it was called The Stolen Earth, and the Stolen Earth to Journey's End. It was a David Tennant era, and literally had all the characters from David Tennant, like Martha, Donna, Rose, Mickey, literally everyone who had ever been in the David Tennant era. Captain Jack was in there, literally everyone, I'm not even joking, everyone, and had the Daleks in. And that was such a better episode. And you know what? That Doctor Who episode came out in 2007, over 10 years before Avengers Infinity War came out. And it was literally just like Doctor Who did it before Avengers did. Doctor Who did it before the MCU did. And I absolutely loved Stolen Earth into Journey's End in Doctor Who. That is one of my all-time favourite episodes. And then Avengers Infinity War copies it. And again, I do think Avengers Infinity War is actually well made. I think it balances the characters well. But my biggest problem with that film is it's just predictable. And even so, the heroes die at the end, they don't die. I remember coming out of Avengers Infinity War and hearing someone saying to someone, oh my god, do you think all the heroes are all dead and never going to come back? And I literally just thought to myself, no, and you know why? Because Disney would go bankrupt. That's a fact. If they killed off half the superheroes in the MCU, Disney would go bankrupt. You knew Spider-Man was going to come back, because they confirmed Spider-Man 3, and you knew Doctor Strange was going to come back, they confirmed Doctor Strange 2, you knew those heroes were going to come back, and I remember the months leading up to Avengers Endgame, Chris Hemsworth and, Jeremy Renner doing interviews for Avengers Endgame and saying, oh my god, you thought the worst was going to happen in Infinity War? Well, you don't know anything about Endgame yet. And then I remember when Endgame happened, and I literally was just like, seriously? It was so predictable. And yes, okay, let's get on to the deaths in Avengers Endgame. So, slight spoiler here, if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame, if you haven't, you're living under a rock, because the hype was going on more time. But, spoiler here, if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame. The deaths were probably the best part of that film, but they are ruined. I'm going to tell you why. Black Widow's death is ruined very, very largely because she has her own film coming out in a couple of months' time. Now, you could say the same with Han Solo in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Again, spoiler here, if you haven't seen the most recent Star Wars films, you could say the same about Han Solo in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Because Han Solo, spoiler, died in Star Wars: The Force Awakens in 2015, yet in 2018, Solo: A Star Wars Story was made. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Solo: A Star Wars Story going in, because I had lots of reservations about the film. Like, why do we have to have a Han Solo origin story after Han Solo has died in The Force Awakens 3 years beforehand? Yeah, I went to go watch the movie with an open mind, and I actually didn't mind it in Solo: Star Wars, because Solo: Star Wars Story does something different. It isn't Harrison Ford's version of Han Solo anymore. It's Alden Ehrenreich's version of Han Solo, and that is different. There's somebody else's version of Han Solo. The version we all know and love of Han Solo, Harrison Ford's version of Han Solo, died in The Force Awakens. Solo: Star Wars Story has Alden Ehrenreich's version of Han Solo, a good version of Han Solo in my opinion. But that's the thing that's majorly different with Star Wars in the MCU. Scarlett Johansson's version of the Black Widow died in Avengers Endgame, and yet Scarlett Johansson's version of Black Widow is going to get her own film a couple of months down the line, after she supposedly died in Endgame. Now, about a year and a bit after she supposedly died in Endgame, so she's not really dead. It's like you kill someone off and then they're back in their own film. And the thing is, yes, I guess you could say something about Star Wars again. You could say, okay, spoiler again here, Han Solo dies in Force Awakens, Luke Skywalker dies in Last Jedi. And yet they're both in The Rise of Skywalker. But the thing is with The Rise of Skywalker, it's not called, Star Wars Han Solo. It's not called Star Wars Luke Skywalker. It's called Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. And, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, although they are in The Rise of Skywalker, they're only in it for about 5 minutes at the most. Probably not even that. And yet Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow dies in Avengers Endgame, and yet we're going to get a Black Widow film. Even though the deaths in Endgame were actually my favourite moment, I was like, oh wow, that's quite daring. They've just kind of reversed it and go, okay, now we're going to have a Black Widow film. In my opinion, that's just not well planned. Why didn't you have a Black Widow movie before Endgame? Because then it would have been more effective. And now, even so Black Widow died, she's not really dead though, because she's going to have her own movie in a couple of months. What's the point? You say the same argument with Iron Man, although Iron Man, I will admit, is a bit different. I've heard some rumours recently that Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is going to make a cameo appearance in Black Widow. And yes, they are just rumours, but at the same time, they are rumours. They can be true and they can be false, but they also can be true, which I don't think enough people, lean on. And also, I'm hearing lots of rumours that Robert Downey Jr. is going to come back to the MCU. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he is worth a lot of money. I was pretty sure they had to pay him like $500 million just to be in Avengers Endgame. But still, just their deaths in Endgame aren't that effective anymore when they're going to be appearing in another MCU project in some sort of way. I think we had enough of Iron Man up to Avengers Endgame, in my opinion, anyway, because out of all the characters, he was in the most MCU films. So, I'm happy with the way they deal with Iron Man's death in that film, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Downey Jr. came back. And the fact that Black Widow died in Endgame and now we're going to get a Black Widow film is just not that well planned in my opinion. I might be proven wrong in a couple of months, so I hope I am. I hope I go to Black Widow in May or whenever it's meant to come out, and I watch the film and actually go, actually, no, that actually makes sense why a Black Widow film actually took place after Black Widow's death in Endgame. But I've got a feeling I'm not going to be. The predictability of these Marvel films is just getting a bit annoying. Like when you have so many serious moments and moments when, it looks like the character's almost going to die, or when the characters do die, like in Infinity War, it just isn't that effective anymore. This leads me on to point number 3. And point number 3 on why I don't like these Marvel movies is the fact that they take themselves too seriously. And this is, I feel like the Captain America films, specifically Winter Soldier and Civil War, I always feel like they're trying to be these fantastic, spy thrillers. And I don't like that Marvel's trying to do that. And I touched on this before earlier in this video. I think the best superhero films are ones that don't take themselves seriously, have a lot of fun, and ultimately deliver on what you expect from a superhero film. Just a lot of fun and a lot of stupidness, but at the same time, it works and it makes you smile. Whilst with some of the Captain America films, or some of the Thor films, or even some of the or Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, I always feel like they're trying to take themselves too seriously. And that's when it doesn't work for me, because I'm literally like, I want to enjoy myself in a superhero film, not literally thinking, not literally thinking all these dark themes of terror and death, especially in Winter Soldier, we get the whole, was it Civil War? One of the two. We get the whole story of Bucky, and, it doesn't really work that well, because it takes itself too seriously. Like I said, my favourite Marvel movies don't take themselves too seriously. Guardians of the Galaxy, it knows it's a superhero film, and it delivers on it because it knows what it is. It's a superhero film. Same with Spider-Man Homecoming, and same to a degree with Spider-Man Far From Home, and same to a degree with Ant-Man, and also I don't consider Iron Man a superhero film, to be honest. I think Iron Man's all a film about this obnoxious guy suddenly realising what matters to him in his life, and I really like Jon Favreau's Iron Man because of that reason, because I don't really consider it a superhero film. Even so, the third act of the film is just smashy robots with Jeff Bridges and Robert Downey Jr. Ultimately, I actually quite like Iron Man. But with the exception of Iron Man, because I don't consider that too much of a superhero film, with the exception of Iron Man, when they take themselves too seriously, I start to consider, why does it have to be a superhero film anymore? Why can't it be a different genre? And I'm going to make my own separate video on this, but this is actually why I prefer DC films over Marvel films. Now, this is just my opinion, but, with the exception of Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, I think DC films are quite stupid, dumb, but a lot of fun at the same time. They bring a huge smile to my face, and that's why I actually prefer DC films like Shazam and Aquaman over films like Captain Marvel and Captain America Civil War, because they are so much fun to watch, and they know what they are, the superhero films, and they deliver on that. But then you look at a film like Civil War, and honestly, going back to the whole predictability thing, if you thought going into Civil War that any of the superheroes were going to kill each other, I'm sorry, but you were dumb. Because literally, I remember one of the stages in that film was, I think Falcon knocks Vision off the ground at some stage, and then Falcon actually apologises for hitting him. There's some part in that film, and I'm just there thinking, why am I watching the film? Because obviously, you know, Iron Man and Captain America are not going to kill each other. Why would they do that? Why would the superheroes kill each other? Just a bit of a pointless film, in my opinion, Captain America Civil War. I mean, it does have moments. Like, I think all the Marvel movies have their moments, with the exception of Thor the Dark World and Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I just think are pants. I think all the, you know, Marvel movies have their moments, but ultimately in Civil War, when you have superheroes fighting superheroes, you just know no one's going to die. And what's the point in that? Why should I care? I'm going to that whole thing with seriousness and predictability. Like, the Marvel movie is predictable, and I don't really like that. You know, what I mean by that, I don't mean like, oh yeah, the superhero is either going to win in the end. What I mean is, like, Endgame, I knew the plot months before it came out. You know, you look at some of the other Marvel films, when it gets too serious, you know where it's going to go. And I just don't like that. Why can't all the Marvel movies be like Guardians of the Galaxy? Why can't they all be like Spider-Man Homecoming or Spider-Man Far From Home, when they're just simply enjoyable and they know they're a superhero film and they just deliver on that, instead of trying to be this incredible spy thriller, instead of the first two Thor movies, where I'm not really sure what they're trying to be, in Black Panther, which I just thought was way too serious. I mean, I get it, why people like Black Panther. Honestly, if you really like Black Panther, that is fantastic, because I understand when people like that film. Again, that was another film, Marvel film, which I really wanted to like, but it just took itself too seriously, that when I was watching it, I was just a bit like, I wouldn't like so much more than they do, but it's taking itself way too seriously, like it's going to be this, you know, Oscar-winning film, and I'm actually surprised that Black Panther got nominated for an Oscar. I mean, obviously it's culturally significant, and at the same time, I think it is well made. I think Ryan Coogler did a superb job making Black Panther, but I wish it was less serious than it was, because, again, with Black Panther, it tried to be serious, but then you get moments of forced comedy in there, which just, it doesn't work, in my opinion, when you have a serious film with forced comedy in there, and it's predictable. That's when it gets annoying for me, and that leads me on to one of the other things that I find really, really annoying about these Marvel films, and that's this. They all lead into each other, and you can't really watch them by themselves, or individual. That's point number 2. You can't really watch the Marvel movies themselves individually. They don't exist by themselves. Now, arguably, you could say the same thing about Star Wars. I love the Star Wars films, and I always will. Yes, you could say the same thing. Yes, you have to watch, you know, 7 to 8 movies to understand the Rise of Skywalker, but you only have to watch 7 to 8 movies. You don't even have to watch Rogue One or Solo. I mean, you can, and your understanding might be a bit better of it. You only have to watch, 8 solid films to get to the Rise of Skywalker. Yet, with Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, you have to watch, 20-odd Marvel movies to understand all the references in all those films. Not sure if I like that much. Because of this, I know someone who watched 10 Marvel movies, just 10, before going into Avengers Infinity War, and yet they didn't understand all the references. And again, the same Avengers Endgame. It wasn't like they didn't watch any Marvel movies going in beforehand, they just watched 10. You should have been able to understand the majority of the references, and they didn't get quite a lot of them, because it's a whole that thing, like, you have to watch 20 odd films to understand all the references. Really? I actually know someone who's quite close to me, he's a huge Guardians of the Galaxy fan, but hasn't really watched any other MCU films, and he wanted to watch Endgame because it has a Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm a bit hesitant on it, because he won't understand, you know, what, half the film, or, you know, 3/4 of the film, because they've only watched the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I mean, honestly, that is problematic. I mean, I personally have seen all 20-odd Marvel movies, and some of them are a bit of a blur to me, I must admit, and I'm going to answer that a bit later in this video. But I've seen all of them, and even in Avengers Endgame, I was watching some of the references thinking, that's a bit cheap. Okay, why do we have to have a reference to Ant-Man there? And there's certain Marvel movies where I just don't become invested anymore, and I just start to sit there and think, is this thing going to be important in the next Marvel movie? When's it going to play significance in the next Marvel movie? Like, I remember watching Thor Ragnarok back in 2017, before Avengers Infinity War, a year before, it was a year or something, or good couple of months before Avengers Infinity War came out. And I remember watching Thor Ragnarok and just sitting there thinking, all these scenes are referencing a movie which hasn't come out yet. Because one of my big problems with Thor Ragnarok, a film which I really wanted to like, I admire Thor Ragnarok, but I don't like it. I really like what Taika Waititi did with the film, I just don't actually like the film. But I was sitting there thinking, obviously there's all these references to Avengers Infinity War, but yeah, we haven't got Avengers Infinity War yet. It's just things like that in the film, and you know, arguably you could say the same about Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and even the second Guardians of the Galaxy, films which I love, but the things with the Guardians of the Galaxy films, I was having such an enjoyable time with them, that when you had all those references, I didn't mind the references so much because I was having such an enjoyable time and I was so invested in those films. But then when I just become uninvested and just what's going on around me, I start thinking to myself, I wanted this to replace significance in about 2 Marvel movies' time. And then, coincidentally, sometimes they do, but I just don't think it works well. And that they all play into each other. Like, there's certain Marvel movies where after you've seen them film, they don't exist in themselves. Either we can't really watch Captain Marvel, a film which I don't like at all, by the way. I don't like it just because Brie Larson's in it. I don't have anything wrong with Brie Larson, actually. I just don't really like Captain Marvel because I think it's a bit of a bland film. But you can't really watch Captain Marvel without knowing who Nick Fury is. So you have to go back and look at, I don't know, Avengers Assemble. You can't watch Avengers Assemble, really, without, watching Captain America the First Avenger. Like, I remember watching Avengers Assemble for the first time, and I hadn't seen Captain America the First Avenger, and there's a whole scene in it where, Captain America looks at himself in ice at one stage. He has, visions of himself in ice, and I'm there thinking, I don't understand this. Things like that which just don't work in the film. Like, I understand the Avengers film is the Avengers film, but, okay, Avengers Assemble I think is a bit different, because that's the first Avengers film. I understand Avengers Age of Ultron and Infinity War and Endgame are a bit different, because obviously they're not Avengers sequels. You do kind of have to watch the first one to get to them, but I remember just watching Avengers Assemble, a movie which should have been its own film, really, if you ask me, personally, because, well, I'd much rather prefer to watch an Avengers film over a Thor film or a Captain America film or an Iron Man film, and yet you have all these references to the film beforehand, which I wasn't that keen on watching. And that's just the thing with these films. They lead into each other, and they just, sometimes when I become uninvested in a film, like I did with Thor Ragnarok in the cinema, the first time I watched it, I just remember thinking to myself in 2017, I wonder when that scene might play some significance in Avengers Infinity War. And it's things like that which annoy me, to be honest. And in my opinion, they don't exist in themselves. Now, though, if you're a comic book fan, you might really like that they all lead into each other. You might really like the fact that, actually, okay, this Marvel movie leads into this one further down the line. Guardians of the Galaxy has references to, I don't know, Thor Ragnarok. You might really like that Marvel movies do that. And because you've read the comic books as a child, or you read the comic books a couple of years before, but you watched the films, and you watch that actually happen in the film, you're like, oh my god, that's what the comic books do. But again, I don't have that personal connection with the comic books that I can say, okay, that actually works. But so personally, to me as a film fan, having all the movies connect to each other and not really existing by themselves doesn't really work for me. But anyway, let's talk about point number 1. Point number 1, why I don't really like the Marvel movies, is this: the directional distinctiveness. What I mean by this is simply, you can watch a film like Captain Marvel or Captain America the Winter Soldier, you might think they're done by the same director. And you wouldn't know they're actually done by different directors. Like, I remember, I actually asked someone once who didn't know the directors of any of the Marvel films. I said, would you believe me if I told you Captain America Civil War and Avengers Age of Ultron were done by different directors? And the person said to me, no. Because there's not much directional distinctiveness. Like, I wasn't watching Avengers Assemble or Avengers Age of Ultron going, that's clearly a Joss Whedon film. I wasn't watching Captain Marvel going, okay, that's the directors that work on that. I don't really know much about Captain Marvel. I honestly thought the film was just rubbish, to be honest. And I'm also not against because it's a female superhero. I'm a huge fan of Patty Jenkins' 2017 Wonder Woman. I haven't seen Wonder Woman 1984 yet, but I'm a huge fan of the 2017 Wonder Woman. But I'm just not a fan of Captain Marvel because I just think it's a bit bland movie, to be honest. But if you told me Captain Marvel and, let's say, Thor the Dark World were done by the same director, I'd probably believe you, to be honest. Because I just don't think that the directions are distinctive in those films. I mean, yes, you could say The Galaxy and Black Panther and Doctor Strange, which have all got that directional distinctiveness to them. But the thing is with those films, that doesn't just make it, in my opinion. And again, I haven't done this list in like an ascending order. Like, directional distinctiveness is the most important thing for me when I'm watching a Marvel movie. But, it does matter to me quite a lot as someone as a film fan. Watching a film like Black Panther, and yes, that's clearly a film by a different director who did Captain America the Winter Soldier. But the thing is with Black Panther, I just don't like the film to take itself too seriously. And it's all these elements coming together. I'm not just saying one of these reasons makes me dislike a Marvel movie. I'm not going into a Marvel movie and saying, actually, that Marvel movie had forced comedy, that's why I didn't like it. It's all these elements all together. So even if, Black Panther did have directional distinctiveness, or even if Doctor Strange, directed by Scott Derrickson, did have that directional difference, it still has to impress me as a film. And the thing is with Doctor Strange, it was forced comedy and seriousness and predictability, which just didn't work in those films for me. And which just didn't work in both Doctor Strange and Black Panther for me. But then if you look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy, all those elements work because all of them are in there. That's clearly a James Gunn film, for the soundtrack, for the use of music, for the way it is. Clearly a superhero film, and it knows it. That's what it delivers on. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It's predictable, but it knows that, and it doesn't take itself seriously. And also at the same time, yes, it does have links to other Marvel movies, but when I was enjoying myself so much, I didn't mind that so much. That's why I like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 so much, because all these elements I'm talking about here didn't happen. Whilst if you look at a film like Black Panther and Doctor Strange, they do. And that's the same with Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. All Marvel movies done by the Russo brothers. Now, the Russo brothers, I actually think they're quite good directors. I've got nothing against the Russo brothers. They managed to balance all the characters well in Infinity War and Endgame, so I do actually think they make films well. But the thing is, though, the Russo brothers also acted episodes of Arrested Development and Community. Two comedy series which I really like. Like, if I went to watch Arrested Development, an episode directed by the Russo brothers, I wouldn't sit there and go, okay, this is clearly a Russo brothers directed episode. And the same can be said to a degree about Community. Again, a comedy series which I absolutely love and I highly recommend anyone go and watch. I think it's on Netflix, by the way, so I do highly recommend Community. But talk about Community. Some of the paintball episodes, some of the best episodes of Community are directed by the Russo brothers. And the paintball episodes, you know, they're all action-packed and everything. And so to a degree, you can see where some of the action in Captain America the Winter Soldier or Civil War comes from those paintball episodes of Community. I know it sounds a bit stupid, but you can actually see some of the directional distinctiveness. But the thing is, the Russo brothers also directed You, Me, and Dupree. Now, if you told me that the same directors who worked on You, Me, and Dupree worked on Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, I wouldn't believe you. And that's what I mean by directional distinctiveness. Just the fact that, even so I know personally, because I'm a huge film fan, I can't really tell, you know, before I went to look up the directors who worked in these films, I couldn't tell if Avengers Age of Ultron or Avengers, you know, Infinity War were done by two different directors. If these films came out about 10 years ago and I was at a much younger age, as far as I would know, I would think of the same directors working, you know, pretty much all the Marvel movies. When they didn't. And I want to see all the directional differences, and I just don't. I mean, this isn't the main reason why I don't like Marvel movies, but it is a big reason when I was sitting there thinking, I want to see something that makes this film a Peyton Reed film, or Joe Johnston film. If you told me that the same person directed Jurassic Park 3, a film which I hate, and Captain America the First Avenger, I wouldn't believe you. If you told me the same person directed The Nice Guys and Iron Man 3, I wouldn't believe you. See what I'm getting at now? It's just that directional distinctiveness. Like, I remember Peyton Reed. Peyton Reed directed my favourite episode of The Mandalorian up to the point. He directed the last episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. An episode I love of Mandalorian. But there's no directional distinctiveness of that episode when I was watching, you know, the end of Mandalorian Season 2 and thinking to myself, that's clearly from the same person I directed Ant-Man. That's clearly from the same person I directed Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, I remember getting to the end of that episode of Mandalorian Season 2 and just thinking to myself, that's why it's about Peyton Reed? That was far better directed than the Ant-Man films. Because even so, I do find the first Ant-Man quite enjoyable and the second one unbelievably disappointing. There's no directional distinctiveness in those films. And that's just one of my big problems. And for someone who is a film fan, and again, this might be a silly criticism to someone who's not a bigger film fan as I am, who watches like film after film after film, from someone who's such a huge film fan and such a cinephile and just such a big fan of films in general, I want to watch these Marvel movies and go, that's clearly a film directed by Joss Whedon. That's clearly a Peyton Reed film. That's clearly a film directed by so on and so on and so on. And yet, I struggle to find that. And even the movies where I do find that, all the other elements of like predictability, you know, seriousness and forced comedy just get thrown in there, that the directional distinctiveness, it just becomes a bit irrelevant. Which is just one of my big problems with all these Marvel films. Even if some of these elements are in there and some of the elements work. Like, look at Thor Ragnarok. That's clearly a Taika Waititi film. But because of the forced comedy, which just threw me off that film, I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. And that's not to say I hate all these Marvel movies at all. I actually think almost all the Marvel movies have a lot of perks. I mean, I think some are really disappointing, like Thor the Dark World and Ant-Man and the Wasp. But then you look at some of the better films in the MCU, like Guardians of the Galaxy, and the reason I like those films so much is because it doesn't do all those elements like it talks about. Yes, it has forced comedy in there, but it works because the film's fun within himself. Because you're watching it, you're clearly a James Gunn film for the unbelievably fantastic soundtrack, but at the same time, though, it's also, you know, it's not taking itself seriously. It's clearly a superhero film, and it knows that. And you know what? It delivers on that. That's why I love Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 so much. That's why I like Spider-Man Homecoming so much. I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming, I don't really know John Watts' directional style, but I can clearly tell that the same person directed Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. I can clearly tell that two different people directed Spider-Man Homecoming and Captain America the Winter Soldier. But struggle to find huge differences between Avengers Age of Ultron and Avengers Endgame, I must admit. I mean, again, I don't think they're bad films. I don't think they're terribly made. I just personally don't like them. And there is a difference with that. You know, I can admire a film like I admire Thor Ragnarok, but I just don't like it. And so those are my 5 big problems with the Marvel movies. So let's go back and look at them again. Problem number 5 was the forced comedy in the film, which I think just happened way too much. Like in Avengers Endgame, Thor is made into a joke. I laughed the first time Fat Thor showed up in Avengers Endgame, but then, you know, I remember one of the scenes Iron Man calls him Big Lebowski, and I was just thinking to myself, I'd much rather be watching the Big Lebowski right now. That's a far better movie than this. The forced comedy in there just doesn't work. It just happens way too much in these Marvel movies, and at the same time, though, moves me on to point number 4, which is predictability, which happens way too much in the Marvel movies. And by that, I don't just mean that it's clear the superhero's clearly going to win the end. What I mean is knowing the plot 4 or 5 months before the films even come out. And then you look at the seriousness of the films. I just think films like the Captain America trilogy or the Thor films take themselves too seriously. Where I'm just like, why can't it be a bit of fun? Why do we have to have all this dark stuff with Bucky in there? Why? And that leads me to point number 2, that all these Marvel movies reference each other, they don't exist by themselves. And that leads me into point number 1, the directional distinctness of these films, which, as a film fan, does bother me. As somebody who watches film after film after film after film, that bothers me. And if you just watch the Marvel movies, that wouldn't bother you as much, mate. But for me personally, when I watch film after film after film after film after film, it does bother me. And so those are the 5 big reasons. The forced comedy, the predictability, the seriousness, which those two kind of go together, but at the same time, the 2 separate points in my opinion. And at the same time though, the Marvel movies reference each other and don't exist by themselves. And point number 1, the directional distinctiveness of most of the Marvel movies. Now, that was in no particular order, by the way. I didn't put that in a particular order before I did this video. I just literally came to this video with 5 big reasons why I don't really like the Marvel movies. However, saying all that, I do admire them. I admire what these films have done. I admire that Avengers Endgame has become the highest grossing film of all time. Although I don't admire the fact that some people think Avengers Endgame is the pinnacle of cinema, what it is not. Some of the other highest grossing films of all time, like Titanic and Avatar, even though I'm not really the biggest fan of Avatar, those films, much bigger cinematic achievements than Endgame did. I mean, Endgame was well made. It balanced all the characters well. And I did really like the last half an hour of Endgame because I brought all the characters together. But in the last half an hour, I just kept thinking to myself, why do we have to watch a 2.5 hour movie to get to this point? And that's just my problem. Like, people think Avengers Endgame is, you know, one of the best cinematic achievements in movie history. It's well made. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, I don't consider it the pinnacle of movie entertainment. I actually consider the Star Wars franchise, at least the original 6 Star Wars movies, the pinnacle of entertainment. Although saying that, I'm actually quite a fan of the sequel trilogy. But at the same time though, I do admire these films. I admire what these films do to people. I admire that people love these films. And I know people personally close to me who love these films, who get really excited every time a new Marvel movie comes out. Heck, I get excited because I remember going watching Guardians of the Galaxy back in 2014 or Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017 and just being so happy that this is a Marvel movie that I finally like, because it is so much better when you go into a Marvel movie and maybe you haven't liked the Marvel movies as much as you wanted to beforehand, but then this one surprises you. And so I am so happy when a Marvel movie does surprise me, because it makes me so much happier. But then when a Marvel movie disappoints me, that's when I start getting angry. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp, I just think that is hugely disappointing. Saying that all at the same time, I will go into all these MCU films, all these MCU TV shows, with an open mind. Like, WandaVision, I'm excited for. That looks like a different, wacky, fun TV show. I'm excited for it. Hopefully I'll like it. Falcon Winter Soldier, I don't think it looks that great. If you do, that's great, but I don't think it looks that great. I think it looks generic and a bit bland in my opinion. But I'll go into it with an open mind. And Loki, the new Loki TV show, I think it looks fantastic. It looks dark, it looks gritty, and it looks like something I would really want to watch. And again, I'll go into it with an open mind. And then Black Widow. Even so, 5 months before Black Widow has even come out, I have my strong reservations against it. I will go into it with an open mind. I will go into Eternals with an open mind. And I'll go into Spider-Man 3 with an open mind. Although we are hearing a lot of good things about Spider-Man 3, particularly Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield potentially coming back. That's really exciting. I will go into all these Marvel films with an open mind. I went into 8 with an open mind. Even so I thought I might have known the plot going into it, I still went into it with an open mind. But whether I like these films or not, it's just my opinion in the end. It's all my opinion. It's just my opinion. I'm not trying to get people, I'm not trying to persuade people, no, just because I dislike the Marvel movies, you shall as well. And that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, this is my opinion. That's all I ever do on this channel. I just say my opinion. I review a film, I say my opinion. Talk about a film series, it's my opinion. You know, when I rate the Star Wars films, it's my opinion. All in all, it's just my opinion. So please don't go at me below and go, well, your reasons are wrong. Because no, it's my reasons. Your reasons might be different. Maybe you love the Marvel movies for a whole lot of different reasons, and if you do, that is fantastic. At the same time though, maybe you just like some of the Marvel movies, or maybe you don't like some of the others. Like maybe you're a huge fan of the Avengers films, but you're not the biggest fan of the Thor films, or you're not the biggest fan of the Ant-Man films, you're not the biggest fan of the Spider-Man films, or not the biggest fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. And that's fine, everyone's got their own opinion on these Marvel films, and I'm just saying mine here. And yes, I've talked about 5 big reasons why I don't like them, but there also are lots of perks with each and every movie. I think the Avengers movies balance the characters very well. And I think the Captain America movies are shot brilliantly. I think the Thor movies do have quite a lot of fun elements in there. And at the same time, could go on and on and on. I think each and every Marvel movie, in some sort of way, with the exception of Thor the Dark World and Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think they have their perks. But ultimately, personally for me, I'm not really a fan of the majority of them. And bear in mind, one last time, this is coming from a guy who didn't go reading the comic books. I don't have a biased opinion on DC or Marvel. Although I must admit now, I do actually think the DC films are better, and I'm gonna make my own type of video why I think DC films are better than Marvel. But from someone who doesn't really have a biased opinion, from someone who, you know, didn't grow up reading the superhero comic book, didn't grow up reading Marvel or DC comics, didn't grow up watching superhero films. I mean, somebody who grew up thinking superhero films were rubbish but not growing up. From someone who only really got into Marvel movies 5-6 years ago. And this is all at the same time coming from someone, and I've left this to the end of the video, because I know a lot of people might disagree with me here, but I am one of those people who love Star Wars Last Jedi. I must admit it there. I absolutely love The Last Jedi. And I've really come to love it ever since I've seen it. It's really grown on me. And so, you know, do take this with a grain of salt. I know a lot of people don't like The Last Jedi, and I do. So all these 5 big reasons why I don't really like the Marvel movies, they are coming from the same person who loves Star Wars The Last Jedi. And so all in all, these are my 5 big reasons why I don't really like the MCU films. There's a lot of reasons with some of the other films where I don't really like them, but I'm not going to get into them now. These are just my 5 big reasons where I'm not really a fan of the majority of the MCU films. Saying that though, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy films, I love John Favreau's Iron Man, I find Ant-Man quite enjoyable, and at the same time though, I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man Homecoming, and I quite like Spider-Man Far From Home. But unfortunately, I didn't really like the majority of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And those were my 5 big reasons why. Anyway guys, what do you think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Please do comment down below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching. If you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more, both film and TV coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye!